For my latest trek-up trip, I went to Cabo Verde, located off the west coast of Africa. It was just my friend Ben and I, and we made a stop in Casablanca for a day before taking the 4-hour flight to Praia, the capital. After a few hours sleep and rest in the hotel, we were driven to Ciudad Vieja, located on the west side of the island. This is the old capital of Santiago Island and was built in 1492. However, it was destroyed in 1712 by the French, and the capital was moved to Praia. We saw an initial video that would help us understand the history, and the saddest part was seeing these slave holes, basically, where multiple men, 6 to 10 people at a time in these small holes, would be made to stand all day in the excessive heat. It was very sobering. We continued on and noted the fortifications and the town below with the ocean view beyond. It was a very interesting stop and definitely a must-do while you're here. We continued down to Old Town and saw the cathedral built in 1462, which is the oldest building on the island and in the country. Then we moved to the Old Town Street, where we continued to walk past these really gorgeous little homes with colorful doors and just very well maintained until we got to the old church of Our Lady of the Rosary. Here's the first place I was able to actually see a kingfisher. Then we walked down to the market and the pillory, which is kind of a memorial to the slave trade. We sat on a local restaurant deck to have a beer and enjoy the view and the waves crashing over the land. It was a very peaceful day and just a very nice visit. We then continued on to Praia, where we had lunch at a buffet restaurant, which had my favorite meal of the trip. It reminded me of Mississippi. We had greens and black-eyed peas and dirty rice. It was just so delicious. We then continued to explore Praia, including seeing the market, which is a typical setup for the area with 2 floors. One floor would have your meats, and the other floor would have your produce. Praia town itself is just very colorful and interesting. It has a really nice museum that tells about the founding of the country, basically devoted to Amilcar Cabral, who's considered the founder of Cabo Verde, and it was just very pleasant. The next day, we took a ferry to Fogo, the next island, and it was an interesting experience, a very crowded ferry. And we had to wait for our bag on the truck, which took for quite a while. But then we drove up to Pico de Fogo, which was just a really beautiful, interesting drive, basically straight up from the town of São Felipe. And all along the way, you could just see evidence of the volcanic history of the island. So Ben and I, both being geologists, we were kind of geeking out a little bit, very excited. This was going to be the highlight of our trip. It was just very interesting because the most recent eruption in 2014 caused people to evacuate, but now they're moving back. But in 1995, there was also an eruption, and people moved villages, and the Germans helped with the movement of this. So it's a varied history here, quite interesting. We had a little stop at the entrance to the Fogo Park, where they're, of course, selling a lot of trinkets, but beautiful views of the ocean. And then if it's not foggy like it was for us, you can see the volcano itself as well. So it was very interesting. You just kept driving along. You could just, once you got into the caldera, you just had the giant peak in view the entire time. There's an area where you can see a sign information board that tells the history of the eruptions over the last 300 years, actually, but the most recent in memory have been in 1951, 1995, and 2014. So because of the volcanic activity, it's very fertile land. So you get to have wine, goat cheese, coffee, and rum, as well as quite a bit of farming on the north side of the island, which we didn't get to. So it's just very interesting overall. And we really got into the understanding of it and just enjoyed the drive and just seeing the beautiful black lava and the rebuilding efforts that are ongoing. So we were going to stay at a hotel called Marissa 2.0. It was destroyed in the 2014 eruptions, but we arrived at the new hotel 2.0, and it was just so cool. It was built out of lava rocks. There's these little huts here, which had the bedrooms below and then the balcony above, so you could have perfect views of the volcano. You could feel the geothermal activity. It was quite hot. The ground inside the hotel and into the room was really hot on your feet. And you could also pass like little pockets of gas, like heated gas every now and then. So it was quite interesting. So after a short rest, we decided to go for a little walk in the village with Mauricio, our guide. We explored the this really cool little restaurant, cafe, wine bar where they also have goat cheese and live music. The wine was absolutely delicious. I bought a bottle. My sister and I loved it months later. But many of the buildings that you see here, they actually had lava pouring over the wall during the 2014 eruption. And in the wine bar, you can see the scorched wall behind it. So it was very interesting. The school was built up on raised ground to protect it a little bit further, but other buildings have had the lava pour over the walls and are even partially buried. So there's a lot of evidence of the former village and how much damage was caused here by the eruption. So we had dinner that night and just enjoyed the views. It was just, I think, my favorite part. Just I wish I could have stayed here longer. It was really cool. We got up the next morning early. Ben and Mauricio decided to hike the 1,000 meter peak. For me, I said no because basically there's no real shade and you're very exposed to the sun, and it was very steep. So instead, I decided to rent a mountain bike and I rode the about 11-mile caldera back out and back. It was so cool, very peaceful. The road was pretty bumpy, but you just saw the volcano the entire way, the lava, the people. It was really interesting. And yeah, I just enjoyed it. Went all the way to the entrance of the park and came back again. I saw where they were growing the grapes on the hills. They're like stand-up plants rather than actual vines. So it was interesting to see. And I just really enjoyed my day out. We decided to go to bed fairly early, just peaceful. I think I would have loved to have stayed here at least 3 days, maybe 4, because aside from hiking the peak and the biking, the hotel itself was very nice and peaceful to just walk around the town. You could go to the north where it's a little bit more fertile. And then you could also walk, there's a 2-day hike going around the top of the caldera. So a lot of options. But the next day we went down to the capital of the island, Sao Felipe. This was a very interesting little town. I loved the colorful buildings. It just had a really good vibe to it. It was a religious holiday, so a lot of things were closed, but it was really interesting to walk past the church and hear singing. It was just beautiful. It had these old Portuguese architecture, and now it's just part of the overall vibe. We took a ferry to Brava Island, our last island, the furthest one to the west, and also known as the Wild Island, and it lived up to its name. We were picked up and taken to the hotel, which is pretty much the straight up top of the island, near the main town of Nova Sistra. And unlike Sao Felipe, this had its own color scheme, basically gray and white buildings with red roof tiles, but it was just equally as charming, just very interesting to see the differences in the islands. We went to for a drive down in the morning and to hike along the natural cove there of Faja de Agua. So it was just really pretty. A little dog came along with us the whole time and kept us company until we made it to the natural pools. This is located on rock ledges right near the ocean. And we just enjoyed sitting there. It was a little bit cooler than I thought it would be, but we would sit in the pools and just feel the waves coming in and crashing. I think we were there for about 20 minutes, mostly to ourselves, but then another group came in about halfway through and then we left. It was raining off and on, so then we drove up further into the mountains and just took our time getting back to the hotel. There's a lot of little villages here. It was just very peaceful. And then finally we had dinner in Praia with our original guide, Eric, before we flew home. Overall, I loved how different all 3 islands were. There's a lot more islands in Cabo Verde, and I would love to come back and visit a couple more. But Santiago Island, where the capital and the old city was, is just very modern. Fogo had all the natural beauty and the colorful Sao Felipe, which I loved. And then Brava was just, I thought it was the most peaceful and rugged. I loved it. It was just exquisite. So definitely recommend, and I'd love to come back again. It will be a while because it's a long way to get there. So, but definitely recommended it.